of ordinary men and women who are transforming and uplifting the standard of life in their communities through understanding and applying biblical principles. Pastor Chooks and Pastor Toyin frequently host workshops, seminars, and conferences for transformation and uplifting of the complete man, complete woman, and wholesome families. Some of the events and programs include the Dream Achievers seminars and conferences, Kingdom Financiers conferences, marriage enrichment courses and seminars, for wives only seminars, single ladies boot camps, limitless men's seminars. They are also the founders of the Power of Woman Academy, a group mentorship for high impact women. They also host the annual Power of Women conferences and events. For more information, please visit www.idelight.co.za and www.reslife.org.za or WhatsApp +27 814 210 835.
Well, welcome everybody to another edition of our Friday night variety show. Thank God it's Friday. My name is Chooks Ugohe, and I am here tonight with two of my friends as we discuss and tackle the father issue. Tonight we have Pastor Jimmy Bent. Pastor Jimmy, you're welcome.
Thank you for having me, and greetings to everyone.
Yes, Pastor Jimmy is the leader of Faith Point Ministry, and he is based here in Johannesburg. We have my friend, Pastor Elijah Masubelele. Pastor Elijah, welcome.
Thank you, and thanks to our viewers tonight.
All right, Pastor Elijah does so many things for men, and we are glad and grateful to have them on the show tonight to discuss this issue. As everybody knows, this weekend is Father's Weekend. Sunday is Father's Day, and we want to contribute to the conversation around the issues of fathering and the things that are happening in our communities, our families, and in our nation. So I want to start the conversation tonight by, just asking the question, and we just going to chat around it. Pastor Elijah, what is fatherhood? What's the difference between a man and a father?
I think I've become very confused myself when it comes to that.
Okay.
Because we are born as males, we are born as men, but then we then have a privilege of becoming a father.
Okay.
And I'm using the word becoming very cautiously, because you don't, being a father is a journey on its own. It does not start when the child, it starts with your psychology. And what I've seen is that most of us men, we are not psychologically prepared to become fathers. And that's why when the woman comes and says, I am with a child, then immediately we run away, because we don't understand what fatherhood is all about. Now, we also think that fatherhood is also about, fathering children and raising children, but we don't realize that it's also about who we become in the process and who we become in our society. Now, it's about taking an active role in becoming and not only a parent, but a guide, but also a spiritual leader and a leader in other people's lives as well. So fatherhood is a very broad sense of things, and that's why today, if you listen to the discourse, our society has got issues with men who are killing women, men who are raping women, But the moment you become a father, it's not only the issue of having a child, but it's understanding in your psychology that if I'm a father, I'm also a protector. If I'm a father, I'm also a leader. So I lead by example. So you cannot be a father and then be just a man in somebody's life. So you need to understand the role that you are taking as a man in your fatherhood ship.
Okay, Pastor Jimmy, please come into the conversation.
Well, I really love what I'm hearing. I'm enjoying myself. What I've done with this is I define this journey of a man in three phases: the male, then you have the man, then you have the father. And I define the male, in my own words, as someone who knows the difference between his gender and that of the female, but does not take responsibility beyond that. And that is the male. And that is not a good definition, because that's to put it in perspective. Then a man is one who takes partial responsibility. So the man is a bit better than the male because he knows, okay, it's not just about gender differences. I ought to be responsible, but then he's very selective in his responsibility. But when you now carry it to the third level, which is fatherhood, then the father is one who takes absolute responsibility for everything he's responsible for. And fundamentally, the foundational word, father, pather, actually means a source. So anytime you talk about fatherhood, you're talking about someone that is a source. And I feel the most fundamental challenge we have is, in this generation, men are struggling to have that definition. Pastor Elijah alluded to that, whereby it's actually difficult to define what real fatherhood is all about, because so many things have gone wrong. Let me tell you one of the biggest challenges. Many people today who are failing in fatherhood are people who were never fathered at all, or were fathered badly. And so we are keeping so much expectation on someone that wasn't equipped to be trained enough to be a father. So unfortunately, you don't expect somebody that has never flown a plane before to get into a cockpit of a 737 and then successfully take off and take you to and land. A crash landing or air crash is almost inevitable. I think that is the kind of predicament men are facing right now, is that the call of fatherhood is upon their shoulders, but they have not been equipped, because either they weren't fathered well or they weren't fathered at all. And most of our men, unfortunately, were raised by our mothers. And as wonderful as mothers are not equipped to provide everything that the parents, male and female, are supposed to provide. Just like a man cannot provide everything the mother and father are to provide. Just like two legs of a man. I have my right and left leg. Anyone that has an amputated one leg cannot win a 100-meter race with two-legged people of almost equal talent and ability. It's not as if he cannot manage through, but so we see many people with amputated ability in fatherhood, and we're expecting them to deliver with two legs in performance. I think, to me, it is a crisis. We should not just see it as a challenge, a blame game opportunity. And Pastor Elijah, I really love what you said. People are heaping so much blame on people that are not even equipped. So we as men, and privileged to be fathers, we should be able to come to a point of empathy and compassion to say, how do we equip and mentor? I think mentorship is going to be one of our major focus in my own heart, because that's one of the things I do. How do we mentor men to really become fathers as God has ordained them to be? That is, to me, the biggest challenge. So to me, fatherhood is the most important role any man can play and I can take it up maybe later on. I don't want to jump the gun, but I believe that is, to me, the highest responsibility upon a man that can be played by a man is that of fatherhood. More than anything, more than being a CEO of a bank or a business owner and all that, I believe fatherhood is the major role you need to understand and equip yourself on how to. We go to school to become engineers, to become doctors, to become officers, to become, even go to seminary school to become pastors. But how many of us have really gone through any school to become fathers? How many of us have really been equipped deliberately to become fathers?
Wow. Wow. Okay, from what I hear, there is male, then there is man, then there is father. So you're born a male, you become a man, then you become a father. And from what I'm hearing, I'm just distilling the thoughts of Pastor Elijah and Pastor Jimmy. That progression, male, man, father, is synonymous with taking up responsibility. Fatherhood being the highest level of taking on responsibility. So the difference between a father and a male is their capacity to take on responsibility. Am I right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So this.
Yes.
So basically, what we're talking about here now is a challenge of responsibility.
Yeah.
Someone said that maturity is not about aging in years. it's the ability to take responsibility. So the question will be now, what is happening? Why that gap in taking responsibility by men?
I think, Pastor Chuks.
Yes, sir.
Let's go to the beginning.
Okay.
And I think this is where most of us, and including myself, we have missed the teaching or the biblical teaching about responsibility. Now, the Bible says, in the beginning, God created the heavens or the earth. And it says the world was without form. And it says the world was void. And it says there was darkness. But God, when God came there was all those things. Formlessness, void, and darkness was hovering above, the earth's surface. But he never looked around to see who can help. He took responsibility to create light. And right there, and we can carry on with the scripture to say, he loved the world so much that he gave his only son. So I think we miss the part where responsibility should be taken without being told. Unfortunately, most of us, we are stifled because we are waiting for somebody to tell us to take, or to teach us rather, to take responsibility. And most of the people who are teaching us to take responsibility have not been taught it themselves. So it is the blind leading the blind, and we're creating a culture of people who don't understand what responsibility means. Now, let me take you back again to Genesis 1. The Bible says, and darkness was hovering above the world. But there are people who are taking responsibility in darkness. And that's where the problem is. Because what do you see in darkness? So they are present but not available. They are in the dark. So God said, in order for me to see what's happening and understand what's happening, I have to create light. So if I come into somebody's life, I now transition from being a male into being a father by creating a difference. Now, a father has to create a difference. A male can be there, nobody can talk to him or to do whatever. He can be there and just be a nobody. But when you become a father, you are no longer a nobody. You are a something that creates. Pastor Benny spoke about a source. So you become a source of greatness. You become a source of good things. You become a source of life. You become a source of protection. So that now takes you out of your immaturity into maturity, because like you rightfully said, maturity is not a right, but it is a trait of the emotionally intelligent. Those who understand where they are, who they are, how they are, and how they should be.
All right. Pastor Jimmy, do you want to chip in something there?
Yeah, just quickly, I want to also agree with Pastor Elijah 100% and add just this little piece. The issue of understanding the fundamental difference between a title and a function. Because when we say father, it's very beautiful when you have a baby, even when you, the person, whatever they do in life, so long as they're able to have a child, they say, this is a father, that's a father. And we have so much expectation based on a title that somebody is bearing, rather than understanding what is the function of a father, rather than just bearing the title of a father. Why am I saying that? Most times, if you look at the reality of our careers, I have the privilege to go through a Navy career, and I was never given any rank until I passed exams and I went through training. And so for anyone that has a degree or any kind of graduation, your degree is conferred upon you after you go through school and you pass some exams, and then you are given the title after you have earned it, But you see, fatherhood is given to you by grace. So every man starts 100% as a father when you're able to have a child. But it is given to you by grace, because it's not because you are a great dad that you had the opportunity to have a father. It is because of grace that you are a father. So you now need to prove to the world that you deserved the grace that was extended to you. And that is why when men look at this subject, they must come from the angle to understand what is the function. And one of the biggest ways to know about the function of a father is to look at places where a father is not there. There is this wonderful film, a Christian film called Irreplaceable, that was an interview about a man who was talking about fatherhood and the crisis of fatherhood. And one of the things he did was to interview inmates in prison. And in that prison, all the inmates he interviewed either blamed the lack of having a relationship with their father or the absence of a father as the reason behind why they are incarcerated. None of them blamed their mothers. Even the women that were interviewed, none of them blamed their mothers. None of them complained about it. They all believed it was something about the father. And if you look at society today, and my brother rightly said it, it's the men's fault. And it comes to that word, founding fathers. You see, fathers are also the foundation. When you look at a building or a house, nobody sells house by going to say, come and buy this house or rent this house because it has the best foundation. You know what I mean? You advertise the finishing and furnishing. But the truth of the matter, if that house doesn't have a good foundation, you won't be able to stay long in that house because it will fall on you. So the reality is that men, just like foundation, are usually taken for granted. But when they fail, everybody in society feels the impact of their failure. So men should understand that we're not the roof to impose ourselves on top of our families and on top of society to show that we're strong men. No, being a foundation is for you to carry the weight of your family, the weight of your congregation, the weight of your society. And if you understand it more from that function than title, then we're on a journey to we're headed in the right direction.
Okay, this is really, really powerful, because what I'm hearing is the lack of responsibility is what is creating the crisis, the fatherhood crisis that we have. When young men are not taught to take responsibility, we are already raising delinquent fathers to be. When young men are not taught to take proper responsibility, you know, if you think about fatherhood as a foundation, like you said, foundation carries the building. So when a person lacks the capacity of responsibility, we're already failing to raise a potential father in that child. So we see where the mistake is coming from, that, you know, young men are not groomed properly. Hence, we're having this shortage of proper fathering in our society. Let's talk about it a little bit. Why is this shortage? Why is this shortage in our societies?
Look, I think we need to be very fair, you know, to the system. We need to understand what happened, you know, during the time of migration and the past, you know, especially in the black family. And when we speak mostly about fathers and men in society, we're referring to mostly black families, because most black families are dysfunctional as a result of the lack of fatherhood. But also, the way we raise the boy child, we don't raise him, you know, with the mindset that he's gonna be a father one day who has to take responsibility. We end up even speaking words that curse our children, and for example, you're gonna end up in jail, and that's why they end up in jail. You know, I think we need to understand the history of our society, and we need to decide whether we're gonna carry on with the history or whether we're going to create a new future. Now, what we haven't done and done right is to create a new future. We haven't done that. We are still riding on the past. We are still riding on the heads of the past. We are still riding on the system of the past that has created men who have failed. So we, and I said that I'm speaking for the present generation. It will be difficult for me to speak for the past generation. I cannot represent them. They are not here. But what we need to do now is to sit down and say, what went wrong in the family structure. Now, we need to be very careful. We need to be very careful. We are blaming a lot of fathers for not being present, and I understand that. But I have been privileged to be in a space where there are families where women have kept secrets, have kept the children or the father of the children's secrets, or have kept secrets within the family structure that frustrated the boy child. And as a result, because they cannot speak the truth to the boy child becomes frustrated. Now, he does not learn what truth is, number one. Secondly, they are not responsible in showing him who his real father is. Now, he learns that it is okay to live without a father. So he doesn't have a problem if he fathers somebody and walks away, because he saw it happening in his own family of origin. For him, that is okay. Now, there's also something that we need to understand about walking away from a child. It's not only the rejection that the child is experiencing, but it's okay to live without a person you love or who loves you. And that's why it's easier for men of these days to kill women, because I can live without a person that loves me, and I can live without, or she can live without me. So it's best if I destroy them, because psychologically I have been destroyed as a young man. So there's no point for me to be better, because I was raised to be bad anyway. So in his mind, he does not think like a responsible person, but he thinks like a male who was just there to serve the purpose of being what? A male and not a father.
Wow. Pastor Jimmy, would you come into the conversation, please?
It's actually a very big topic. When you look at the reason why fathers or men are where they are today in society, and why it's so dysfunctional, it's actually a function of so many things lacking in the structure to have enabled. For example, for you to have a plant that will strive and grow, just look at basic need of a plant. Just use that basic analogy. It needs the sun and it needs water. Let's leave everything else out. We know it needs nutrients in the soil, but let's just use the basic one. It needs the sun and it needs water. For any reason, I have plants in my house and around my house, and I have seen plants that somehow sometimes were not privileged to be exposed to the sun as others, and you could see how they were suffering. Now, will I blame that plant when I didn't expose it to enabling environment? You understand? So there's so much environmental factor that plays into what my wonderful brother just spoke about now, that has made men this dysfunctional. And if society is not empathic, if we are not sympathetic, if we don't understand and come from that place of empathy, but we come from a place of judgment, we're already losing it. And you see that we have a lot of angry men. And honestly, when you look at the kind of crime, and I like the way we have narrowed it a bit now to look at the challenges within the black fatherhood issue, the black father, which is the reality that we face. We have a lot of angry men in society. And some of this anger, maybe most of it will be directed to the issue of their own fatherhood relationship. I've dealt with many issues in my life as a pastor, where you find men that are very angry, and you find that such angry men have not been given opportunity to actually deal with that anger or speak about the anger and find a way out. So it's bottled up anger. So we have a lot of volcanic men moving around like volcanoes, and they end up saying, oh, they think falling in love is all about just falling in love, liking somebody. And then later on, you see that they explode like a volcano, and everybody wonders what happened. But if we don't address the environmental factors and all these other complications that has made men the way they are, we will keep repeating this mistake, and we're going to keep having volcanic eruption after another sad event after another. It needs to be addressed, and I'm glad we're having initiative like this. Pastor Chuks, I really want to commend you for this initiative to address this very critical and very important matter. Men don't like to talk. I think that's another important matter we need to agree. Men want to talk about business, talk about achievement, talk about what they want to do, what they want to achieve. But this issue of vulnerability and where they're really failing, men don't want to be vulnerable. Men don't like being vulnerable.
So how do we create an environment that allow men to be vulnerable, that allow men to talk, that men can talk to men? Because there's a real problem in our society. There's a real issue around this matter. and I don't know how much is being done to find solution. So let's talk about it. How do we create that environment where men can feel safe to be vulnerable, so we can deal with the issues that need to be dealt with? As we have all agreed, we need foundation. If a society is going to be viable, there must be founding fathers. There must be a foundation. Fathers must arise. The fathers must arise in the church. Fathers must arise in our communities. There must be fathers. Or a group of human beings that don't have fathers don't have foundation. And that much we have already established. And we can't keep going with no foundation. So at some point we need to solve this problem and begin to seriously tackle it and deal with it in the manner that it deserves. I like us to talk about it. Maybe Jimmy, let me start with you, sir. Why are we not creating the environment for men to come and be vulnerable?
I thank you so much. In fact, I think to me that's the question you're asking will go back to each of us beginning from our own cycle of influence before we move to our cycle of concern. And that means for me to actually desire to have men to become fathers and do what they need to do, I need to deliberately, as a man who has matured a bit in the Lord and in physically, I have to deliberately take under my wings mentees that I'm going to mentor, not just in business mentorship, not just ministry mentorship, but I need to also understand that my family or the family responsibility of a man should also come under that mentorship. If you go to the average company or business, I've dealt with many companies and businesses, and you find that they have package for almost everything you can imagine. But there's no package for the family. There's no family a plan for the family. Remember when women have a child, they go on maternity leave. And then when the idea of paternity leave came, people started mocking and laughing. But to be sincere, it's a wonderful idea to have paternity leave for the father to, because already for not even giving the father that paternity leave and allowing him to go to work, and the child is going in that environment, you're already saying it's okay for the father to be absent from the home. It's the mother that is most important. And then later on, the mother realized, I really need this man, but he's too busy to come. So society. So what I think to me the first key is, how do we create an enabling environment, like I mentioned about the plant, so that men can be vulnerable? Number one, start with ourselves in our own cycle of influence and begin to have a conversation with our men under us and our peers, of course, and make them understand it is not just being successful as a businessman that is the most important thing in life, or a minister, but it's also to be successful as a father. I think that family angle, because I have had issues where people come for counseling and you tell them, oh, do you have a pastor or do you have anybody you look up to? And most times you find the women have a pastor or some male figure that they refer to. But there are many men that have counseled, in my own practical experience, that they don't have one man that can actually speak to them or correct them. So many people are Rambos. They are law unto themselves. There are men like that. There's no one man. I mean, I have Pastor Chooks and I share the same spiritual father. There are some men who, when they call me and say, Jim, I need to see you, I need to talk to you, no matter how successful I am in my own individual environment, I humble myself. My physical father is still alive. My spiritual father is alive. I go to them and I will listen to them. Does it mean that they have to give me food every day to eat? No. It's more than that. I respect them and I look up to them. But how many men honor you like that, whereby you can actually call them to order? When a man raises his hand against a woman, how is it that we don't have enough men that will call that man to order and actually get the job done? And we just have to just look at it like a wild gun that has just gone off. So to me, it's a generational. Many generations have brought this, but we can't continue looking at the past. We need to now begin to create an enabling environment, beginning with us and our cycle of influence.
Yes, Pastor Elijah, please come into the conversation.
I think we need to be very careful. And we are hoping that the men who are listening to this conversation will hear what we are saying and not misinterpret it. When the moment you mentioned the word vulnerable, already I can imagine most men standing up and saying he's talking, nonsense or whatever. Because the word vulnerability it's usually used to denote weakness. And that's not what we are meaning here. And also, even if I were to speak to denote weakness, it's very important that man understands that weakness does not necessarily mean that you do not experience pain or you can experience pain. You know, we have to allow ourselves to be weak, but in our weakness know that, you know, we have grace, we have God who's above us, who's giving us the strength. Now, most of us, the moment we hear the word vulnerability, we run. I cannot be vulnerable to her. I cannot be vulnerable to him. Now, the opposite of that vulnerability is it's anger and it's attack, it's murders, it's all those things. So they are trying to show that I'm not a weak man, therefore I'm going to do something that is horrible to show that I am not a vulnerable man. But vulnerability, let me speak a bit about vulnerability, so that if there's a man listening out there, they can go home now and say, I want to be vulnerable. Vulnerability allows you to breathe. Now, the topic for tonight is that, you know, I cannot allow myself not to breathe. So vulnerability allows you as a man to breathe. It allows you to be in a space where you can question yourself. It allows you to be in a space where you can question your intentions. It allows you to be in a space where you can say, can I go to Pastor Chooks and ask him for advice? Can I go to Pastor Benny and ask him for advice? Now, going to Pastor Benny doesn't mean you don't know anything. Sometimes our perspectives are so wrong, we could be so wrong in our rightness. So vulnerability allows you to be able to see different perspectives. Vulnerability allows you to be able to present yourself as a human being who has got flaws and who is willing to also be teachable. Now, many people don't allow themselves to be vulnerable. Like Pastor Benny has said, they allow
Pastor Jimmy, not Benny.
Vulnerability allows you to be able to, sorry, Pastor Jimmy.
Yes.
Pastor Jimmy allows you to spend time going to somebody else and hearing whether you are right or wrong. And if you are wrong, what is it that you can learn from that particular person, and then take that and implement it in your life. And when you go and present yourself, you don't go there as a weaker person, but you go there as a person of wisdom. Vulnerability opens up wisdom. There are people who've got knowledge, but because they cannot be vulnerable, the knowledge becomes destructive to them, and yet they should be using it for the benefit of their life and other people's lives.
So is it not that, you know, we have misunderstood the whole concept of vulnerability, and a lot of it comes from societal conditioning, where a boy is told you can't cry, you can't, you know, if you try to cry, they say, no, you're not a girl, you can't behave like a woman. And some of these things now make it look like, you know, a boy cannot ask questions, a boy cannot show emotion, a boy cannot show his feelings. So now he grows up like that. You know, I know many people who say, I never got a hug from my father. Because men were conditioned and brought up to be stoic and macho and not showing any kind of emotion. So the problems we're dealing with here come, you know, from multiple angles. There are societal norms that have shaped how a man is defined, and these things need to be broken down by the word of God, and men need to be helped and liberated. We're talking about breathing today. Men need to breathe. We need to breathe and stop choking. The choking is now producing, you know, all kinds of malady in the environments we live in, and this matter needs to be dealt with. Pastor Jimmy, I like what you said, that, you know, we have to start individually, taking responsibility to start mentoring people around us and start raising people. But can we take that to the next level? As the body of Christ, as a community, how do we create a structure to raise proper fathers? Let's delve into that. Let me give some context before you jump in. I love that. Yeah, let me give some context before you jump in.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
A number of countries who want to, push the economy, they say no. The reason why our economy is bad or is not working is because we don't have a lot of entrepreneurs. So they institute policies that train entrepreneurs. They offer all kinds of incentives for people to go out and start their own business. They start running entrepreneurship programs at primary schools, secondary schools, universities, so that people are trained to become entrepreneurs, because we know that strong economies are because there are strong entrepreneurs. So many countries have realized that and saying, so they are deliberate now to encourage and empower entrepreneurship. So people are from university trained to start their own business, not to graduate and get a job. Now, a lot of countries are realizing that, and they're doing it. And I see those countries that have implemented this kind of things, in 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, they are going to be very strong economically because they are developing entrepreneurs. All right. Now, we are talking about a problem where there is a lack of fathering. So from a community or societal level, how can we address this matter? Pastor Jim, please come into the conversation.
Very good. I think first thing we need to realize is, like we've already agreed, is if we identify how to create, don't forget that word, enabling environment is critical, that will make men feel safe and understand that it's okay to be vulnerable and to be human. And when we create that environment by, of course, role modeling, because I don't believe in telling people this is how it is to be a father, and then when we look at your own life, you are failing or you are lacking or you yourself are not ready to be vulnerable. So if Pastor Chuks, for example, wants to have his mentees to be vulnerable to him and to be open to him, he has to get to a place or create a space that is safe enough for them to trust him enough for him to be vulnerable. So it's a mutual thing. So we actually lead them in being vulnerable. And when we talk about vulnerability, it's not being, I killed somebody, I raped somebody. No. We're not talking about that's extreme. And that's not what we're talking about. Those are legal issues. But we're talking about just being able to accept that the fact that you are human. For example, do you know this? We know you are pastors, so I always say to you, but maybe for the men out there, the shortest verse in the Bible is John 11:35. And it speaks about one of the most vulnerable time in the life of Jesus. It says, Jesus wept. Now, we need to understand that word is powerful because this is the creator of the whole universe. At that point, when Lazarus had died, Jesus knew he was going to raise Lazarus from the dead, even before he got into Bethany, even before he got to the city.
Yes.
So why was he weeping there? So he wasn't weeping because he knew
he was
Lazarus had gone and it was too late. No, he knew that he was going to raise Lazarus from the dead. But why would Jesus still weep when he already knew he was going to raise the dead? It was simply because he wanted to show us his humanity in identifying with the vulnerability or the weakness of the family that had thought it is all over and it's too late. And Jesus wept, and recorded in the scripture is to let us understand Jesus was also 100% human as much as 100% God. So we need to understand for men, and Pastor Chuks, you said it rightly, society has taught our men and our boys, you must be strong. And that's how I was raised myself. You know, if you cry in public, but I have seen men cry when they lost a soccer match, cry when things happen. But when it comes to emotional issues, when they cry there, we say, no, don't be emotional. But I can tell you, men are literally even more emotional than women when it comes to the things that they love. Look at sports, and you see that men are very emotional.
Very true.
Telling them lies that they are not emotional selectively. They selectively, but we're very emotional. So I think collectively, we need to understand how do we create a safe environment that will allow men to be vulnerable enough, and how do we incorporate that into everyday life? So how do we make it, and I will recommend, just to allow Pastor Chuks and Elijah to come in, accountable relationship. How can we be create an environment where we have what we call not just responsibility, but accountable relationship, where I am accountable to Pastor Chooks and Pastor Elijah and vice versa, and we grow a community of accountable relationships like that. In that way, we're able to deal with issues before they get out of hand, and we begin to hear things on the news that shocks us. How do we deal with that from that? I think building environment for accountable relationship will be a good start. Okay,
Pastor Elijah, please jump in.
I think we are on the right track, but let's go back to the stories that we used to hear when we were growing up, where we were told to be strong, be strong, you're a man. We need to understand why we were told that. And I don't think the people who told us that, whether they were our fathers or our mothers, I don't think they explained, what it meant to be strong, what it meant to be a man at the time. And usually you would only hear that when you come from the street crying if you were bitten by another man or boy. And you would be told that, what kind of a man are you? What kind of a boy are you? Now, in your mind, you thought, okay, if something doesn't agree with me, or if I cannot get something right, therefore, in order for me to show my manhood, I need to be violent somehow. And that's why, and that's how we became a violent society. And the strength that was talking about, was spoken about at the time, was be emotionally strong, that don't fall for everything that is emotional that affects you, because if it affects you, it will control you. You will find yourself fighting with everybody because emotionally you are not strong. And that is what we should have been advised at an earlier age, that your emotional intelligence will control your physical being. Now, also, when Pastor Jimmy speak about Jesus weeping, and we need to understand how he loved Lazarus. But the fact that he wept was not to show sign of weakness. Like he's saying there, sometimes we don't cry or weep because we are showing sign of weakness, but we could be hurting inside and saying, let me allow the hurt to come outside, because if I don't allow the hurt to come outside, I will go around hurting even innocent people. Now, what most of us did, and I want us to coin the term volcanic men. Like Pastor Jim has said, we are walking around with volcanic men. And indeed, they've become volcanic because inside they haven't allowed themselves to build a strong man who is emotionally strong, but they go to the gym, they become big, they lift weight, and they want to become strong, and they want to have money, and they're doing all sorts of things that are physical, but the emotional man is so weak that one little thing, it triggers him, he kills himself or he kills somebody else. So when we were told to be strong, we were not properly explained that here we are talking about emotional intelligence. And that's the first thing we need to do with our men and for our men, that when you are emotionally intelligent, it means you are in control of your emotions. You allow yourself that when you are not feeling well, the Bible says, be angry, but in your anger, do not sin. Even God understands that it's important that when you are emotionally intelligent, you will know and identify when something is anger. And how do you deal with that situation? Our men have left anger to control them. They are not in control of anything. And when they are arrested and in jail, only then you hear them saying, I regret what I did. It is because you never learned to strengthen yourself emotionally as a man. We always say men don't show emotions. That's the biggest lie ever told by anybody. Men do show emotions, like Mr. Jim said. They cry when they lose, So our biggest problem is that we have taught ourselves that softer emotions are not acceptable when you are a man. So therefore, We are quick to show aggression. We are quick to show anger.
And those are emotions.
Yeah, so we need to change our psychology and try to learn that being vulnerable again doesn't mean you are weak. It means you are emotionally intelligent to understand that it is not only a fight of men against women. You see them on the road driving, two men who have never met, but they are fighting each other. They don't even know each other. You know, so it's not even an issue of men killing women, but it's about men who are not emotionally intelligent, who cannot control themselves, who don't even know how to control themselves, who in their mind believe that being a man means that you must have a strong fist, you must show the other men that you can beat them up, and you must show the men that you can be strong. It doesn't have to be like that. You can be the most strongest and yes, sweetest man ever in the world, because you understand that strength does not come from physical strength, but from what? Spiritual and emotional strength.
Wow. Wow. This is really, really powerful today. This conversation, that strength is about being emotionally intelligent. So the more emotionally intelligent you are, the stronger you are. Meaning that a weak man is simply a man who is not emotionally intelligent. And Pastor Jimmy, I like what you said regarding Jesus weeping. That was emotional intelligence at work, at expression there, at its best. Because basically he came to a place where people were mourning and people were crying. And he wanted to identify with them. And that's what emotional intelligence is about, being able to read the emotional state of your environment and adapt accordingly. That's what it means to be emotionally intelligent. So you can read accurately the emotions that are in a space, and then you can adapt yourself accordingly so that you can achieve whatever objective you want to achieve. Someone who is not emotionally intelligent will jump into a place and then explode, or either explode in anger or explode in tears, and they can't read what is happening to be able to adjust themselves to achieve their objective. They do things that eventually defeats their objective because they are not emotionally intelligent. And how many times have we seen that, where people get into a fight and then later they start regretting, why did I even do that? Why did I even get into that? All right, so let me frame another question that we can talk about now. All three of us here, we are fathers, and we have boys that we have sired, and we want these boys to become responsible fathers in their own right. So let me ask, how are we raising these boys to become fathers, or how should men be raising boys so that they can become men, so they can become fathers? Let's talk to fathers out there tonight, people who are listening. How should a boy be raised by his father so that he can become a father? Pastor Jimmy, go.
I think this is to me, that is a fundamental question, because everything begins with this saying that says charity begins at home. I agree with that saying, in the sense that if you truly, and even the scripture says, anyone that cannot take care of his own household is worse than an infidel or an unbeliever. Now, what that means is this: I need to start by first showing my sons what it means to be a father before I teach them. How is that going to be? The way I treat their mother, the way I treat other people, the way I talk about other people. So if I, as a father, is verbally or physically abusive or absent or not doing all those things, and I'm busy telling them, do as I say, don't do as I do, no matter how good I am as a teacher, I'm neutralizing my teaching skills by not mentoring them correctly. So I would say start by showing your sons the right way to be a good father or a great father to start with. And that's number one. So do it by showing them before you now talk about teaching them. Then number two, you have to create time to mentor your children. There's this seminar I went to, and the talk we had, it was mind-blowing. We have many successful CEOs and of banks and corporations and entrepreneurs who are successful in business, and the people that end up taking over that business are people that came to work with them in their offices, not their biological children. Why? Their work took them away from home, but while they were away from home, they had time to mentor young men and other people to take over the business, and their own children end up, I'm talking about horrible experience of ending up on drugs or on the streets or being irresponsible or just blowing daddy's money away, because the father never realized, I have to create deliberate time to mentor my family. So I will recommend fathers should show what it means to be a father. Number two, fathers must deliberately create time. I have hung out with my children. You know, I have both girls and boys, so I have time when I go out with my daughters alone, and I have times when I go out with the boys, and we spend time together and we talk about issues like that. And so, and no matter how busy you are, you know, so many excuses we give is about being busy. I have to get money, I have to make a living to provide for the family. But sometimes we get so carried away, we try to make so much to provide for the family that when we come back home, there's nobody to take care of. The family is no more. Even if they're physically there, they're no longer present, because you have not created quality time. Cannot be replaced with your money or with your sweet talk or with your gift. You can give all the gifts in the world. It cannot replace that, your presence there. And I tell you, my best memory of my father, my biological father, are days and times when he was in the military, when he would come home and take me out for dinner, and I would just sit across the table and just tell him how my day was, just, you know, a child's day, nothing very eventful. But my father would sit down with me, and I can't tell you how much the gifts of the watches, the toy cars, and all the things he gave me, I can't remember how much they were. But what I treasured the most out of all those things were not the gifts my father gave me. It was actually the time Daddy had for me. And to me, fathers have missed that point. They're so much focused on trying to get income and take care of the family, and they forget that you don't have to. That's not the only thing you need to provide. There's so many other areas that are lacking, and you can't replace those aspects with the money or provision.
Pastor Elijah, please come into the conversation. Thank you, Pastor Jimmy. Very powerful.
Let us pose the question back to the fathers today. And I love a scripture in the Bible where Jesus asks Peter, "Who do you say I am?" And I think we should every father listening to this conversation today must go back to their children and ask them the same question: who do you say I am? Because if you know, we had a research done where we asked children who their heroes were, and most of these children chose other people from the street. They chose Spider-Man, they chose The Rock, they chose men who were not in their lives. Now, I'm raising children. My children must see me as their hero. And how they see me as their hero, it's exactly what Pastor Jim is saying, in terms of when the child is in need of something or a friend, is able to say, I know I have a hero. When Jesus was troubled, he never went anywhere else, but he went to his Father. And he even said, you know, I will do the will of the Father. And he says the Son does what he sees the Father do. So Jesus knew that his Father was his hero. He understood that. But let's go back quickly. And I want people to understand something here. And we need to understand that the Father is not a state of physical body, but it transcends the physical body. And how do we know that? Jesus was raised by Joseph, and Joseph was an upright man. We know that from the Bible. So Joseph was an upright man, but Jesus wanted to show that you can be a man and yet don't understand anything about the things of the spirituality, where wisdom comes from. And he made it clear that if you need wisdom, you have to be aligned. Your signal needs to be aligned with the giver of wisdom. And I have seen it myself that many times when I tried to be a father who was not aligned with the spiritual wisdom, I have failed. But the moment I aligned myself and always sought the wisdom of God, I found myself in a situation whereby I dealt with things differently and in a much better way. So we can say that how do we create an environment? The environment that is needed is not the outside environment. It is the internal environment of man. So this environment in here needs to be clean. It needs to be clear. The clutter in here needs to be removed. And a new space needs to be created, and like the Bible says, you cannot put, new wine in old wine skin. Most of our men are walking around with old wine skins, and they want new things to happen, and they're not seeing those new things happening because why? Their psychology is messed up already. So the environment will not start at home. And I always say to people that the peace that you say you are not getting at home is not going to be found at home. It is lost inside of you already. And that's why you don't even have it at home. So stop going home to look for peace. Go home and take peace home. You yourself are not at peace and you are fighting everybody else, and you expect somebody to be something that you are not prepared to be. So before we can create an environment for somebody, that person needs to understand that I need to create a conducive environment for myself. Now, most of us, we are not prepared or ready for that because why? It is comfortable to clothe ourselves with things that makes us, to pity ourselves. So most of us we pity ourselves. And by pitying ourselves, we expect other people to pity us. And anybody who does not pity us becomes our enemy, and we fight them back.
All right, we're going to take a quick ad break, and then we're going to come back and we continue the conversation. We've got a few more minutes in the show. I do have a few more burning questions I want us to tackle, but we're going to go for an ad break for a minute or two. We'll be back shortly.
There comes a time in your life when you need a change, an upgrade. You need upliftment. You need lasting results. You just want your life to be real. You need your life to be meaningful, deep, full, purposeful, and easy. You're looking for enlargement, amplification, increase, strengthening. You're looking for growth in your life. You want leverage, strategic advantage, gain and favor, ability to influence, clout and strength. Join us at Resurrection Life Church every Sunday. Visit our website .reslife.org.za for more information. Make this year your year of being real. Embrace rapid enlargement and leverage. It is your time.
Okay, Pastor Jimmy, it looks like Pastor Elijah stepped out. Oh, you're back. Okay. All right. Well, we are back. Okay. All right. Now, I wanted to bring the issue of the rise in violence against women that we are experiencing. Is there a connection between the absence of fathers and this violence against women? Is there a correlation? Is there a connection? What do you think? Anybody can jump in.
I think I'm very careful in terms of saying that there's a connection between the absence of the father and the violence perpetrated against women. I looked at that I cannot breathe moment, and if we take the situation of that guy, Mr. Floyd in America, the situation looked like a racial motivated situation.
Yes.
But I said to myself, the situation is not about race. I said we have a lot of men who have got their knees on their own neck, But we have a lot of men who've got knees on the necks of women. But we've got a lot of men who've got their knees on marriage of other men. You know, so the issue here is not only about race or it's about men or versus women. The issue here is accepting to live in a society with men who are walking around with volcanoes, like Pastor Jimmy has said, and they don't want to go and seek help, and we live with them, and as the people who should be responsible, we allow that to carry on for a long time. Now, eventually what these men do, they end up taking somebody's life because they themselves hate themselves so much. So I think we need to accept the fact that our work will not only start at dealing with gender-based violence, but our work will start dealing with the societal issues that we are experiencing as both men and women. We are walking around with most men who are angry, and they're angry for many reasons. Now, be very careful that it's easier to blame the father who's not there. Now, what about the fathers who are home and are even worse than the fathers who are not home? So we need to be very careful because we've got a volcanic father who terrorizes people in his own home, and those people are afraid to even speak out. He raises very bad children because of his strictness and his an arrogant way of doing things.
His volatility.
So he's raising boys, he's raising boys, but teaching them to be toxic. He's there. He's present. So we need to be very careful in terms of saying it is the absent father who's who's causing these problems. We do have present fathers who are worse than absent fathers. So let's be very careful in terms of how we bring the correlation between men who abuse women, because there are men who are raised by, we've got different scenarios in our country currently where men live with their fathers and they are drug addicts, they are murderers, they are thieves, they are rapists, they live with their fathers in their home. Now, I wrote a book about a young man who grew up in an environment where his father abused his mother every day, every single day of his life. So what are the present fathers teaching their boys or the girls in their presence? We need to also deal with that matter and not only focus on the absent father.
Yeah, Pastor Jimmy, please come in.
Yes, thank you. Okay, thanks to Pastor Elijah. I really enjoy myself. I will come from this angle also, in addition to, in agreement with my brother, to say, looking inward, I think first we need to look at it from the individual. Why will an individual be volatile or volcanic, as we have defined, or be angry? It starts with, number one, I believe, is an identity crisis. The fundamental meaning of the word abuse comes from two words. We know that. Abnormal use. And they said when you don't know the purpose of a thing, then abuse is inevitable. Yeah. So it shows us there's an identity crisis within that child or that man, whoever he is at this time. Whether he's in his home or he's absent in the home, there is that identity crisis. So number one, when you don't have a clear sense of self-worth, and because of lack of identity. For example, you have a microphone, I have this earphone. Once each one is playing their role, this earphone is not going to fight with my iPad that I'm using to have this conversation today, because the roles are so different, they are not competing. So if I remove this earphone, it doesn't affect the iPad. But if the iPad thinks it's the earphone, and the earphone is now the one being caught in the camera, while the iPad is one carrying the picture, but nobody's seeing my iPad in the shot, and the iPad gets jealous, and because the iPad does not know his real value and identity, he's bound to come and attack my microphone. And that is what we find. So number one, I believe it has to do with an identity crisis issue. We need to help men to deal with that issue of identity crisis right from within them, so that they can accept themselves and say, this is who I am, this is what God has made me to become, and then have a good sense of self-worth. Number two is to deal with the issue of self-hate. Anytime somebody can go out to harm somebody else, is simply showing you how much they hate themselves. The Bible tells us, love your wife as Christ loved the church, because no one yet hated his own body. Talking about the fact that you ought to love yourself. And that's what the Bible says, love your neighbor as yourself. And there's a way I define this thing. I say there are there are men who are driven in three different ways. There are men that can think between their ears, and these men are ambitious and they are very visual. There are men that think between their shoulders. That means they think based on their values. And there are men also that think between their legs. They are driven by their passion and by their vigor. And so when you look at society, you can look at men and you can tell the fundamental decision making of this man is coming from down below, or it's coming from the middle point, or it's coming from the head. And the most important part to be driven is actually come from the heart. And it's to raise men that have a human heart. Because some of the things that when I look at these things and I hear some of the crime committed, I don't know if it's in this world that it's committed or an alien came and committed it, because it doesn't sound human. And I don't want to talk about those things because it really makes my heart to get really angry when I see the kind of crime that is committed against, when we look at the gender-based violence or even just violence in general. And some of the violence is just out of this world. And it tells you a lot about self-hate. The person hates himself and he's taking it out on everything that looks like anything in his life, that of value in his life. And it's actually destroying himself. So we need to address those issues, and we need to really, it would require a spiritual approach. It requires the emotional approach. It will require a physical approach. It will require even the economic empowerment approach. Because if the man feels he's economically castrated, and the woman kind of gets ahead, and the society is kind of giving the woman the headway in every setting, the woman kind of seems to have the advantage in his own setting, then he's going to fight everything like that. So we need to also realize that to address this issue, we need to come with a spiritual, emotional, material, economical, physical, and everything. We need to come with all the works together to address this issue.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen, for the contributions. All right. I was listening to our president 2 days ago or 3 days ago, and I heard him talk about this issue of gender-based violence. And I want us to, I don't know who's listening. Maybe somebody who's listening right now has the ear of the president and the people who make policies in our nation. This violence is perpetrated by men. It's men hitting women, killing women. It's men. And I know they've discussed it in parliament. They've created a helpline. They've tried to do some things. Can we proffer solutions right now for the next 20 minutes? What is not up to 20 minutes, maybe 15, 17 minutes. What can the government do to solve this problem? How do we help the men? Can we proffer solutions?
Pastor Chuks.
Yes, sir.
Pastor Jamie spoke about, in fact, you also touched on it, that a lot of countries are investing on economic empowerment, building entrepreneurs and so on. And it appears as though our problem in our country is economic emancipation. And you are speaking right when you said the president spoke about gender-based violence at length. And a lot of resources, I know for a fact, because I'm part of the Houghton Men's Forum. A lot of resources are going into helping the victims of gender-based violence. But nothing or less is going to help the perpetrators of gender-based violence. And I think that is happening because of anger against those perpetrators. But you'll be surprised that sometimes the perpetrators themselves have been victims of something at some point. So they do need help. And I know that the government has got some interventions in trying to help there. But there are a lot of men who do not have help because they cannot access it. And a lot of men movement that are frustrated, especially in Houghton, that are frustrated because they want to help men, but they are not getting support from the government itself because the resources are not geared toward helping men, but are geared toward helping women. And this I understand because of historical economic problems or deficiencies that our countries have suffered, where women, were not working, were unfortunately disadvantaged. But now our problem was not only economic disadvantage, but also emotional and spiritual deficiencies. Now, the church is trying its best to help men and accommodate men. But when they go back out to the society still receives them the way the president spoke about them on 2 days or 3 days ago, because it appears as though the problem in our society is men. I don't think the problem in society is men, but the problem is how we do things, how we raise the children, how we speak to people, we have that societal problem. So, number one, we need to come up with a movement. In fact, we need to create a ministry called Gender-Based Violence Ministry, where both men and women will work together, where the two of them can sit and say, men are complaining about this, women are complaining about that. Instead of separating the ministries, because now what I'm picking up is that we are penning men against women, who are doing this. It's women who are doing that. And that approach in itself exacerbates the scourge of gender-based violence. Let's put men and women together and say, guys, we are all suffering the scourge of gender-based violence, So, because even with us, Pastor Chuks, we are also afraid of other men out there. That's why you even find when a man is beating a woman in the street, no man wants to be involved. But how can we make sure that when a woman is being beaten in the street, we don't stand and do nothing about it, but we intervene? The law itself must protect us. The policeman needs to be educated in terms of how do we deal with men issues. Once we find that kind of satisfaction and guarantee that all of us, both men and women, will be protected, trust me, gender-based violence will go down.
All right, Pastor Jimmy, come in. We are providing solutions for the government.
Yes, I totally agree that what needs to be done is that there has to be a total reorientation in the way we are approaching the challenges of society, and stop fighting and dealing with the reaction of cutting the branches or dealing with the branches of fighting the fire after the fire has started. The principle of fire says there are 3 elements of fire. Once one element is not there, then there can never be fire in the first place. And in society, we keep going behind and trying to quench the fire. And unfortunately, when we look at the men, as my brother rightly said, as those who perpetuate this evil, and of course, nobody is justifying gender-based violence. I totally am against it. I agree with my brothers here. But what we are saying is that we need to stop looking at the branches and go to the root of the matter, the foundation of the matter. What do we need to do? We need to start with a reorientation. We need to understand that we need to reach out in compassion towards people who are growing in an environment that is already setting them up to explode in the future, and begin to operate with empathy and not make them victims before they become real victims, and not castigate them and deal with them in a way that you don't even solve. When you honestly, when you put people in prison, I know that's the law and that's the way the law has directed us to do it. But people don't go to prison to get reformed. Prison doesn't really reform people, because people come out of prison and still commit offenses, and the percentage of those who don't commit offenses are actually less. So the reality is that means our reform systems are not working. We need to look at it, like I said, from a very comprehensive approach. What do we need to do? What does the government need to do at the family level to make sure that children who are growing up in a home environment are properly mentored with a father figure over that family? It doesn't have to be their own biological father. We are pastors, and I have sons and daughters that are not my biological children, and they look up to me just like as much. Why? So there are people in society that government can connect with, that can join together from different walks of life, that can begin to mentor society. And like I said, please, mentorship should not be limited to making successful businessmen, because they can still explode later. We can see very wealthy people perpetuating violence against women, very poor people perpetuating violence against women. So that doesn't solve the problem. So now The reorientation has to be a societal approach that will say, let us get men and fathers in society who we can call as role models that we're going to bring together, and we're going to expose them to men of different, men and women. And I agree with my brother, it should not just be men, it should be together, men and women of different generations to be mentored together and find out from society, this family, what can we do to enable the boys growing up in this home who maybe are growing up in a single parent home. How do they get mentored? How do they get equipped? How do they get enabled environment? How do they get move on in life? How do we approach this situation? When there's a problem, do we first wait for them to commit the crime, then take them straight to prison? Or how do we begin to deal with issue where something is committed, but it's not, nobody has died, nobody's raped, but it's already a sign? How do we identify these signs that is going to lead to a problem, and then begin to bring them under that mentorship so that they don't have to get to that point where they react, they show that their vulnerability in that sense? So how do we nip it in the bud? And I think it begins by having that movement, having that approach where we say, let us get mentors, fathers in society that are going to lead this initiative. We're going to join together and have people come together. And it always starts with a conversation, to be sincere. We need to have a conversation, and then let's get feedback from the families. What is it like growing up in your environment without a father? What are those things you really wanted to say to your father that you want to say to us now? And then we respond as a father. I remember when I launched my book last year, I had Tim Modise. Tim Modise was one of my he assisted me in the launch, and we worked together. And he spoke about his own, how much this the subject of fatherhood is missing in action, the fatherhood crisis, and that's the title of the book. And he spoke about how even this launch reminded him of his own relationship with his father and the challenges there and all that, and the vulnerabilities and all that. And the beauty of that meeting, that point, was every man there realized how much a father in their lives, how much difference that father could have made. And it had nothing to do with how wealthy or how poor the father is. We should never define fatherhood from an economic point of view, because we miss the point. We must understand that there are great fathers that may not have so much money, and we may have great fathers that have so much money. So fatherhood is not defined by the resources that you have in terms of wealth, because you can still operate as a father at all those levels. So I think there has to be an initiative. We need to have men and fathers in society that would need to accept to come down below to give a helping hand, and also get feedback from those who are exposed to the most challenges growing up without a father, or like my brother said, you could have a father in the home that is even worse than a father outside. So I think we should deal with dysfunctional situations. It has to be addressed comprehensively in society.
All right, let me chip into the conversation. I don't know who is listening. Maybe the president is listening, or somebody who has the ear of the president is listening. I think the first thing is that we need to define this problem correctly. We need to define the problem correctly. Until you diagnose the problem correctly, you will not be able to find a solution. I am saying that the problem comes from a lack of understanding that is going on in the head of the men and the women. So it's an understanding issue, meaning that we need to teach and communicate to produce that reorientation. So there is a mental and a psychological reorientation that needs to happen at the grassroots. So we're talking about a country of 58 to 60 million. There has to be a mass movement of knowledge and wisdom around this thing. So we need to first understand the problem is there are some things that people don't know, and we need to create means to be able to teach it. We're going to teach it from all angles, in the schools, in the media, organize community workshops, organize community gatherings in the churches, in the mosques, in the synagogues. There has to be a comprehensive syllabus or curriculum that is developed, and people start learning these things. That's one. Now, we know that if they do a study of all the gender-based violence cases that we've had in the country, let's say in the last 5 years, just take the last 5 years and study the perpetrators of this violence, the ones that are known, the ones that were arrested, we will find what is common among all of these perpetrators. It could be that they were boys that were raised with no fathers. Now, when we study all these cases of perpetrators of this violence, we will be able to see what is the common thread, because there will be a common thread or some common threads. If it's not one thread, a few threads that are common, a few denominators that are common among all these perpetrators. I don't have the statistics, but the government does. The government knows who these people are, because some of those cases, those men are in jail or whatever. So a study needs to be done to find out what is common among those people who have committed this crime. And then we can identify what those problems are and then start addressing those issues from a national level, and start addressing those issues. Now, these are people who have done the crime, and they were arrested, they were found, they were caught. There are other people who are in similar situation just waiting to happen. So if a study is done, then we know, okay, 200 of these cases, this is what is common among them. And this is how we can deal with it. Because if there are 200 of them like this, it's clear that there could be 2 million waiting to happen. And we don't have to wait for it to happen and then cry after it's happened. We need to stop it 10 years before it happens, 15 years before it happens, 20 years before it happens. And this is what the government needs to do. I agree with Pastor Elijah. A ministry has to be set up, because this is huge. It's a ministry that has to be set up. So the way we have the Ministry of Sports, or the Ministry of Education, or the Ministry of Health, a department, a government department has to be set up that has a multi-pronged approach to address this issue. Because we can't keep crying after people die. Then we come and cry. Then we make public announcement. Then we cry. No. We need to attack it 10, 15, 20 years before it happens and erase it. If there are societal and cultural norms that are producing this dysfunction, then we need to deal with it. Why is rape so high? Why is rape so high in our society? The rate of rape in the country is almost, in fact, they say it's worse than what you find in war-torn countries. And yet we are not at war. Why is that so? So we need to study it and come up with an academic definition of the common factors in the perpetrators. And then government can come up with solutions. I believe that prevention is better than cure. We need to prevent it. We need to prevent it. It's so painful. I don't even want to go there because it makes me want to cry. When I read these things in the media, I was reading today about this lady that was killed that was 8 months pregnant. It just makes me cry. We can't continue crying after the fact. We can't. Yeah. Something needs to be done long before it happens. And if we take that approach, I believe that we will begin to address these issues. All right, we only have 5 minutes, what is our closing parting shots? Pastor Jimmy, go first, and then Pastor Elijah, you come after that. And then I can wrap up and we close.
I would quickly recommend that men should actually seek help. I think let us recommend to men out there, please don't wait until it's too late and then society comes on your neck and then you have to face the wrong end of the law. Why don't you open up and seek help now? So I appeal to men out there to seek help. We know there is a fundamental challenge of dysfunction and we need to find help. If we don't find help, it's not going to go away. You're not going to put your head in the sand like an ostrich and think it will go away. That problem is not going to go away until you seek help and get help. And you will need help at all levels. So please, men out there, seek help.
All right. Pastor Elijah.
Pastor Chuks, I think I'm one of the privileged people around, because I did not grow up in a proper family structure where there was a father. My mother had to struggle to raise us, so I did not know much about fathering myself. Also, I did not grow up in an environment where we know there was church, so the part of spirituality also was lacking. So there's been a lot of dysfunctions within the family structure. So in the process, then I have learned to walk away. So in order for me to avoid things, I walked away. So, and that became my way of life. Now, what I'm saying ties in with what Pastor Jim is saying in terms of men must seek help. So walking away is not the solution. And making a person disappear by killing them is not a solution. You still have a problem. And we cannot solve your problem while we say, or by sending the social worker in the prison to come and help you while you have already killed somebody. Let us send a social worker now before you kill somebody. Let us find help now before you become a volcano to somebody else. So I'm not only talking about men here, but I'm also talking to women, because what do women say to their children about their absent fathers? What do women say about their children to their present fathers? You know, what do women say to their children about the fathers in their life or the men in their lives? Because women too are angry. I mean, we know for a fact that we're living in a society of single men or of single women. They come to church on Sunday. We know that they are bitter because either they were impregnated by a married man, or the guy who impregnated them promised them heaven and earth, and he ran away, left them with the child. They struggled with this child without money, without milk, without whatever. So they also could be bitter. So they also need to go get help, so that they don't raise men who are just bitter like them or like their ex who ran away. So hence I said our approach, like you said, must be a multi-pronged approach, not only focusing on a boy child, but focusing on the person raising the boy child, focusing on the person who ran away from the boy child, and understanding why that person left. Because sometimes, and you know, we know, I mean, we have tried to save some of the marriages where we failed. Some marriages you cannot fail, where parents separate, but we need to teach them that separation of parents does not mean separation of children. So we need to, the fatherhood remains even if the marriage is dissolved. The fatherhood remains if the separation has happened. So we need to let men know out there that even though you come from a bad or a worse background, like my background is very bad, you know, and I'm not gonna sit here and speak as though I grew up knowing who God is and how to speak about the Bible. No, I did not. Some of the things I picked them up as I go along, you know. So, but there was a spirit that wanted to learn inside of me to become a better man, you know, and that's what I'm encouraging most men to do. Don't let your past cost you to be afraid to go seek help and become better. You still have an opportunity to become a better man.
My battery died. I don't know how long did I speak with no.
I was doing like this.
Oh well, I'm not sure. I'm not sure where I dropped off, but what I'm saying tonight.
From the time you started talking after Pastor Elijah.
Are you serious?
Anything to us?
Yes, from the time you started talking after Pastor Elijah. So you need to repeat yourself as much as you can.
Okay. All right.
Summary.
So it's wow. All right. What I was saying is, we will start doing something. We need to start doing something. Men who know what is right. We need to start going out into the communities to organize talks, go to the schools to talk to the boys, organize community outreaches, and start doing something. It doesn't matter how small it is, but let's start doing something. This whole thing of being reactionary, we must stop it. I know, Pastor Elijah, you know, I've attended one of your seminars for men. We need to do more of those. We need to do them maybe every month. And I'm saying to brothers out there, and maybe women out there, maybe you can't organize a seminar, but you can support somebody who can. I'm going to start organizing seminars. When we put that kind of initiative out, support us, put money behind it, help us spread the word. We need to start gathering 500, 2,000, 10,000, begin to speak, utilize social media and begin to speak to men. We need to create platforms. And I was saying that I need my two brothers. I'm going to call you guys and we will synergize our energies and our efforts and our wisdom and run, events together and start doing something to help solve this problem. We can't keep crying every time a woman dies. We can't. No, we can't. We really can't. So while we wait for the government to do something, we need to start doing something. We will go to schools. We will go into the communities, or get auditoriums in community centers, gather the men and speak. And I believe that the Spirit of God will help us, and we will help as many people as we can heal the hurt, diffuse the volcano before it erupts, We will diffuse volcanoes before it erupts. God helping us, we will take on that responsibility and we will do something about it. Well, thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining me in this conversation. It has been a very, very enriching and enlightening conversation. I believe somebody out there has been helped. Somebody out there who has the ears of the people who make decisions has heard us tonight, and you can carry this message. We are willing to do something, and we want to do something, and we will do something. I believe I get an amen from my brothers.
Amen.
Amen.
Well,
yes.
thank you so much, gentlemen. We will carry on the conversation offline, and God helping us. Well, for everyone who watched, thank you for being part of the show tonight. Thank you for listening. If you have the ears of policymakers, well, please help pass the message. One of the things you can do, this recording is out there on YouTube, is out there on Facebook. Will you share it? Will you forward it to a man out there? Will you pass it on to a policymaker? Let them listen to the conversation. It's been about 95 minutes or 97 minutes that we've been talking. Let them hear what we are saying. We are willing to help. We are willing to come up and, proffer solutions and start doing something to help raise men. We will no longer choke. The fathers will no longer choke in our land. The fathers will speak and they will breathe, and they will breathe well. I want to say happy Father's Day to all the men out there. This weekend, happy Father's Weekend. God bless you. We will carry on with another conversation next Friday as we gather for Thank God This Friday. It's from me, Pastor Chuck Sogo here, and on behalf of my brothers, Pastor Jimmy and Pastor Elijah, we say good night. God bless.
God bless you.
Goodbye. Thank you. Bless you.
There comes a time in your life when you need a change, an upgrade. You need upliftment. You need lasting results. You just want your life to be real. You need your life to be meaningful, deep, full, purposeful, and easy. You're looking for enlargement, amplification, increase, strengthening. You're looking for growth in your life. You want leverage, strategic advantage, gain and favor, ability to influence, clout and strength. Join us at Resurrection Life Church every Sunday. Visit our website .reslife.org.za for more information. Make this year your year of being real. Embrace rapid enlargement and leverage.